Hey, good morning, folks. Good afternoon. If you're joining us from the East, looking at our participant count, and we have some folks in the waiting room who are coming in. That's awesome. We're going to go ahead and get started since we are short on time, and we're starting. It is 9 o'clock, but we know we'll have some folks filter in. Thank you all for joining today on our Spark and Fortive webinar. We have a very exciting discussion today with Trang Pham from Fortive. We're going to go ahead and let Trang introduce herself real quick, and then we'll jump back to the Spark team, introduce ourselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about everything that we've been working with Fortive and Spark so far. So Trang, I'll turn it over to you real quick to introduce yourself.
I'm Trang with Fortive. I am the Senior Manager of Global Trade Analytics and Audit. The piece that's important to this webinar is that I am responsible for about 18 different companies, import and export data for our team. So a lot of data.
Lots of data. Yep. Coming from a lot of different places too. And Dan, we'll go ahead and shoot over to you, then Josh, and then myself.
Hey everyone, I'm Dan Banta. I'm the principal consultant working on this project with Trang's team right now. I've got a lot of experience all the way from data engineering all the way up to the analytics and visualization layer. And I'm excited to share some more of our philosophy and this Fortive story with you today. Pass it to Josh next.
Yeah, I'm Josh Scott. I head up our solution consulting team here at Spark, and I'm just excited to be a part of the webinar and talk more about just the exciting work we've done with Fortive and answer any questions that you guys have.
Awesome. I am going to shout out Laura Reindell from our marketing team as well, who is off camera and on mute, who has been supporting this action. Thank you, Laura, for all the work that you've done. And then my name is Garrett Petrie. I am on the dark side of sales, have been for the last 3 years. I started on the delivery side as a BI consultant prior to that. And we at Spark focus on modernization journeys, right? And helping people connect their data from all these different silos and applications into a central source of truth, and then making sure that they can utilize the insights and analytics that they have at their fingertips. And that's how our conversation started with Trang, actually. One of the key pain points that we identified early on was just not having functional dashboards working on a regular basis because of some of these ingestion efforts. And so our initial project was really around pipelining this data and utilizing AI to automate a lot of the stuff. And so that's going to be the meat of our conversation today, is how do we utilize AI across our entire pipeline? Because we're short on time, I won't dive too much into that. What I will say is, if you have questions about anything that we talk about today, please feel free to put them in the chat. Josh and I will be responding accordingly. And then, yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive in. So I'll turn it back to Trang real quick. And Trang, maybe you could just start by talking a little bit about those initial pain points before we partnered together, and then kind of the process it took to, uncover and solve some of those things. And we can leverage Dan as well during this time too.
So as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm responsible for data for 18 operating companies. And not only do we get data from these different companies, but we're getting different data from different sources for each of these companies. So data from government, data from brokerage, which are third-party providers for us, and then data from each of these operating companies as well. And each of those companies and governments, and even with the different third-party providers that we use, everyone's data is a little bit different. And even if it's all pulling from the same source, you would think that if you're pulling from government data, right, from the US government, that all that data would be exactly the same, except, if someone adds a different column, or if the software updates happen and the column name is slightly changed, or if a team member pulls from April through May of the year versus January through December of a different year, it can really mess up the data. The data quality is key, but historically what we had issue with was that it was very rigid. It had to be exactly the same, in the same order, named the same, within the same time frame for it to mash together to work in our pipeline. So it's been really helpful. Dan can get into the technical details of where AI has really helped allow flexibility in our pipelines to make the data ingestion and then the visualization or even pulling reports a reasonable time effort for any of us. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Trang. I can jump in and kind of and start to go over some of that philosophy of how we approach data and AI to drive solutioning around those types of data puzzles. I'm gonna get through some of that content, and then I'll kick it back to Trang to describe some of the big kind of more some of the big business problems that are on our plate. Even in recent weeks, you've probably been hearing a lot of news about tariffs and all that kind of thing. That has some big impacts in the data that we're working with here. So I want to make sure to leave some time for her to describe some of that and how we're breaking ground into some of that work based on all this momentum we have in terms of what I'm about to share. So everyone can see my screen, is that right?
Yes,
Great.
sir. We got you.
So I wanted to step through kind of a series of high level kind of big analogies that I think set the tone for the philosophy that we use when we approach data engineering coupled with AI. Before I dive into this first analogy to explain some of that core philosophy, I think one of my broader favorite analogies around AI is, and they've done studies around chess, and they have developed chess computers, as most of us know, that can beat the best grandmasters. So they actually run tournaments where grandmasters play against different chess computers, different configurations. What they found, though, is that if they put like one grandmaster with a chess computer in the tournament, that grandmaster paired with the chess computer wins every single time. Sometimes a grandmaster with a slightly lesser version of a chess computer still can beat a better version of a chess computer. So AI is really, when we approach AI, it's this idea that we're wanting to put these tools in the hands of really talented engineers to drive solutioning and to tackle the types of problems that Trang mentioned and beyond when we're working on growing a data engineering stack. So it kind of bleeds into this first analogy that I really like, and it is further sort of solidifies that concept that tools evolve, but principles endure. So when it comes to like great mathematicians or accountants, there would have been the abacus, pen and paper, calculator, more advanced computers for doing math and calculation. Ultimately, the core goals of mathematicians and accountants or anybody that would leverage number problem solving, they would have a lot of those same goals. There wouldn't be this big turn everything upside down paradigm shift necessarily. They would just be able to realize some fundamental principles and fundamental goals at a higher level. So that's a lot of the way we think about AI coupled with data engineering. One of those foundational principles that we really lean into is data quality. So analogy here being, if you clean a pane of glass, no matter how good you clean that pane of glass one time or set up a schedule for cleaning it, we all know it's going to get dirty again. Data tends to be like that. Any of us that have worked with a lot of data knows that it's almost like a plant that grows and the shrub kind of grows wild and you have to prune it. You're never done trying to stay on top of polishing, making sure the data quality is landing correctly. Data that's flowing from upstream is landing in a way that can the analytical insights that you're generating from it can be trusted. So that foundational pursuit of data quality, accentuated by AI, is one of the main things that we really are tackling in this work and beyond. Another fundamental concept in data engineering, it's a really important one, is reusability and modularity goes a long way. So I think any of us that have played with Legos know that you could build everything from a lawnmower to a spaceship to a house with these basic 2x2 plastic building blocks. So when we build data engineering solutions, we want to build them in a way where we can reuse what's already been accomplished for different contexts. If we're too rigid in terms of how we build something, then we limit our ability to scale and take on new types of data or take on new types of data quality challenges or any of that sort of thing. So reusability and modularity goes a long way, and we'll see how we supplement with AI to accomplish that at a higher level in a moment. One of the main places that combination of data quality and modularity starts to collide in terms of the work we're doing with Fortive is this whole battle against schema drift. So I don't know, any of you that have worked with data have experienced any sort of changes upstream in terms of column structure. Trang was mentioning it already, data types, additional columns. You can expect a certain type of puzzle piece to arrive from upstream. And in this case, you can see this puzzle piece looks like it would about fit, but it doesn't quite fit exactly. I sometimes wonder if like a 30–40% of my career has been cleaning up schema drift related problems. So it's one of those things that is very consistent in terms of data quality issues in any project. And it's really one of the main things that we're tackling with AI in some really robust ways. So one of the fundamental ways that we tackle schema drift with supplemented by AI is drift detection. So before AI, certainly we would run lots of audits against what we know that we're bringing from upstream and landing into the target, source to target. We know certain patterns like primary key testing or various types of anomalies around materiality. Folks that know their data really well, like Trang, can give us cues around what data should look like as it arrives, and we could build an audit without AI that would track for certain known potential issues. When we add that AI layer, not only are we running some of that logic that we know to look for through the AI layer, we can leverage the AI's capacity to understand patterns and look for other patterns that we might not anticipate and start to flag those as well. So always pursuing great fundamental validation and auditing in our projects, and now we think we can do it at that higher level supplemented by AI. Another really clear way we tackle schema drift, and this is another similar analogy to the Legos in a little bit more of a specific context. You can imagine a more rigid pipeline design that would be stamping square pegs into square holes, say. We understand that we're going to get very specific square pegs from upstream. We really need to make sure they're those square pegs. And then if we get them, we have a really deliberate, maybe even fast and automated way to stamp them into those square holes. But as we know, working with data, it just isn't like that. Schema drift, certainly, but even as we integrate different and new types of data. So when this concept of metadata-driven pipelines, where we build something that we use a configuration that essentially is pattern-based that allows us to solve and generate one pipeline, but ultimately that's the fundamental makeup of that configuration and metadata-driven pipeline allows us to repurpose it and build it into different types of pipelines or to manage schema drift, those types of things. So it's a lot of this, what do we expect to come from upstream? We know where the data needs to land, and then we take inputs from upstream and we run it through that AI layer to determine whether or not we're going to be able to land it in the correct structure as it lands in the data warehouse. So that's something that we would do without AI, and now we do it in an even sharper way with AI. I like the analogy of a cook or a chef, where you might have a really great recipe for something. Maybe you want to add something similar to the menu. You would borrow off of a lot of what was already accomplished in the previous recipe and repurpose it to make another great dish on the menu. In this case, the AI might even be this panel of sous chefs that are keeping ingredients razor sharp, cut, ready to go. The chef in this case would be, one of our great engineers that is leveraging something that's already been accomplished in a more pattern recipe-based fashion and then solutioning around it. So as you might imagine, that ability to take what are maybe odd inputs from upstream, schema drift at risk inputs from upstream, and detect when there might be potential issues that would land downstream and then even fix them on the fly. I would say we're not quite at this paradigm where we have self-healing pipelines that no matter if there are that would catch a lot of the big, maybe major schema drift issues and then fix them and you wouldn't even notice what was happening. But you can see how we're on that pathway at this point. Ultimately, by building all of the pipelines in the way that I've described over the last couple of minutes, we are setting ourselves up to cash in when the technology reaches a place where we can realize something like self-healing pipelines. So we're not there yet, but we think we're a lot closer and kind of trying to ride that leading edge as we approach it. So that's kind of one chunk of that schema drift. The data quality, the modularity is one piece of how we're using AI. Another piece that I think is a little bit secondary, but ultimately is something that excites me, I think, just as much, is working with a great data model to do more with an AI layer on top of it. And it's something I've called out to Trang's team from when we inherited, kind of jumped into the project, is they had already had a lot of great momentum around their core concept for the way they model their data. Great modeling of data goes all the way back to Kimball in the 70s. This idea that the great understanding of dimensions and facts and the way they relate to each other, the way that you can build reporting around them, those would be the foundational pillars for building any modern architecture as well. And then when you bring in this AI component, so much of the AI, the capacity to leverage AI to drive value in data, folks that have set up that capacity to do that also know the power of great data modeling and have built AI that is good at essentially you feed in context around how a data model works. And there are a couple of really interesting things that you can start to accomplish that we're iterating around and trying to grow our capacity around. One that's really exciting is this idea that you can type or ask natural language questions and get answers back. I would say this is in a form right now where some are lower hanging fruit, easier analytics questions are probably fairly accessible through some of the Streamlit apps and some of the way that we've set up some of this stuff. There are probably in the future more robust analytics and tough problems could be solved. But either way, that ability to write natural language and get easy answers back allows analysts that you might have on staff to tackle the bigger problems while some of the simpler questions are being answered. Or beyond that, also just an AI layer built on top of a great data model gives developers, or really anyone that can understand the way the data fits together, this great context around how that data works, how it fits, can ask questions around relationships and all that sort of thing. So feels like that, whether, great data dictionary and other documentation feels like that map, but this AI supplemented layer on top of a great data model feels like a really dynamic map in terms of that discovery for building new reports and breaking new ground in the work. So let me kick it back to Trang, and I'd love, Trang, if you could describe a little bit of some of the challenges coming up around solving for tariff data and some more of the kind of business specific problems that are on the horizon for us as we continue. Yep.
Yeah. So as Dan was saying, having a great foundation, but also being set up for success for the future. With the AI, the natural language questions, being able to bring on Dan, or Dan and team can have other engineers join quickly and ask questions without me being the one that's answering all the questions, or having a user interface for our business partners to be able to ask the very simple questions of the data. That frees up a lot of my time to help bring more value to the company and to the business, and think strategically instead of constantly like, well, how much is 25% of our imports from China? How much is, the very simple questions that is available right there in front of them. Currently, right, we've been hearing tariffs on the news, and the team has already been able to help me create a really good model for answering these, hey, tariff questions into the US. Are we, what's the impact of 34% more on China? But it gets more complicated than that. So as things change, it's like, okay, well, it's 34% of impact, except for here are all the exceptions, and being able to integrate those exceptions into our modeling, or the future, perfect state of where trade compliance is going to go with this data is we have a complete view of the world, where things are coming from and moving to, and being able to model a business partner coming in and saying, hey, I'd like to move my sourcing of these products from this country to that country. How does that affect my overall landed cost of the product? What are all the tariffs? What are all the logistics implications? And we've created a great dashboard to answer a lot of really good questions for the business. But that dashboard was envisioned 5 years ago now. It's a whole different landscape today. What the answers we needed then are completely different than the questions that are being asked today. So being able to have that flexibility with the data that's already there to answer the new questions of, what's going on with this country, or how are things changing, or how have things changed over time, is really important. So I'm super excited for what's coming next, and using this AI layer with the Spark team and the data that we have is really allowing us to be flexible and pivot quickly. You never know if you wake up at 6 a.m. one morning. Unfortunately, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm always waking up to news, and which means a lot of other questions from the business coming my way, and being able to have this kind of self-serve interface with the business and our data for everyone on the East Coast or in different time zones in Europe or in Asia, to understand what's happening and what impactful things are being announced, is really helpful and frees up a lot of our time. We will have more data coming in, right? So now we've been really focused on US data. The future is rest of world data. What's the impact if Europe has a retaliatory tariff, or different countries in Asia doing their own tariffs? And there's additional complexities to that because the data isn't in English, and I don't speak or read a lot of other languages. So AI also helps with that, the translation of one language to another and being able to let anyone look at it and understand it, whether or not they speak Chinese or Japanese or French, is going to be helpful. And it's amazing what technology's allowed us to do in the last couple of years.
Trang, I
Definitely.
love that. I love that point in general. I was curious, there's sometimes this hesitancy around implementing AI in organizations, right? And AI has been around for a really long time, but we've kind of seen in the last 2-3 years, right, this acceleration of it. Did you feel like there was an appetite for AI at Fortive, right? Or were we pushing against the grain a little bit here?
I've been really fortunate in the company as a whole, especially the leadership, really leaned into AI. They saw that we're a technology company and AI is really what helps accelerate the future and make our work faster. We're practical in that sense where we're like, we understand that AI is not going to take the job and we still have to double check the work, but it's going to allow us to do our work faster and enable us to do things that we want to do instead of the manual things that we were doing day to day. I think there was a lot of focus on the natural language models, the chat bots, because that was really what was being demonstrated. But within the companies, with the users within our companies, I was telling them, don't be scared of AI. You've been using it, you just didn't realize it. The ability to unlock your phone by looking at it and it looks at your face, that's built off of AI. A lot of small things that you didn't realize was actually an AI or a precursor to AI in the background has helped them embrace it more. And we did a lot of work on working with different AI things. What the Spark team gave to me was, our focus was really on the front end, the user interface for AI. We didn't realize that AI could be used on the back end to help with the pipeline before it even reaches the user interface. So that was exciting for us. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think there's sometimes this misconception around like AI is just these chatbots, right? And being able to utilize it across your pipeline, I think helps build that initial trust in it, right? So that's really cool that your leadership was bought into the idea, right? Because I think that in organizations where AI is they call it a security risk, or we don't want to utilize it because we're just not sure of it, right? Folks are using it no matter what, right? And so being able to use it in this way allows for security and allows for us to understand it and support these pipelines and automation, right? And help take off a lot of that manual lift. So that's great.
Brian, could I ask you one quick question? I think it's very interesting the analogy that you used about AI. You said something like you think it's scary, but you're already using it. And by the way, I'm going to steal that. I'm officially going to use that in every call I have going forward because that's awesome. But if you had to give advice to somebody sitting in your seat who might be apprehensive for security, compliance, data integrity reasons, just general governance concerns, what would you say to them about the safety of AI at Fortive?
From a corporate perspective, right, if you're worried about your company's data, these AI providers provide you enterprise versions. So, don't use the free on the web's chat GPT. But if your company pays for the enterprise version, you're company data is completely within its own firewalls. It's protected. It's not being sent out. It's more of a one-way street where it's able to grab data from the outside world, from the web, and bring it in, but your data that's living within your firewalls isn't going to be exported back out. So there are a lot of security around different AI providers now, and the enterprise versions definitely give you that security. And from a user perspective, right, the data integrity, it's not here to replace us. Unfortunately, I was really hoping that I would be able to retire early because I could have the AI working at my laptop and I could just go hang out. But the human is still the subject matter expert. You're still the one that knows what you want out of it. Right now, what AI is really good for is helping you do things faster, either doing things that you don't like to do or doing things that are time consuming that aren't value adds. A quick example is just this week, there was a large list of tariffs announced against a large list of countries. Well, a quick and dirty version of doing an analysis, my country list is in a 2-digit ISO code, but what was published by the government was with the full country names. I have a lot of those codes memorized, but I don't know all of them. So I was able just to upload the lists into my Copilot and ask it, hey, give me the 2-digit codes for these. 2 seconds later, all the codes are there. I didn't have to go to the ISO website, look up country by country, type it down. It can do the work. It can be, Microsoft named it Copilot, and it's very appropriate for that piece. And it's to help you do things that you don't have time to do. Or you could hire the equivalent of like 10 interns to do this manual work for you all the time, 24/7. AI doesn't sleep, so that's helpful. It's always, if you wake up early or happen to have a thought in the middle of the night, you're not bothering some intern while they're sleeping. It's always available. So those are the advice pieces for people that are hesitant to start with AI. You don't need it to take over everything. Just start using it a little bit at a time for the small things, and you'll find value.
That's amazing. That's exactly how we think about it at Spark. We think about it as a partnership. It's not here to replace us. It's here to partner with us to make us more effective and be able to deliver more value more quickly. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
We're coming up on time here, but I just want to take a quick second to thank you, Trang, for being here, for your partnership with Spark. And it's been a wonderful journey. I think we started together in August of last year, right? And the work that we've completed since then has been nothing short of tremendous. It's been wonderful, especially with all the fluctuation happening in our world today. We're able to combat that with data, right? And so thank you for your work and your partnership. Dan, thank you for everything you've done and being available to us and your great presentation, and to the rest of the Spark team as well. If you guys have any questions at all, everyone on this call is on LinkedIn, so please feel free to connect with us. We'll also be sending out this recording to all the attendees, and we'll have it available if there's anyone else on your team who would like to review it. And if there's any time that you would like to have a conversation about analytics, AI, and how it may have a place in your architecture, your environment, we're always open to those conversations. So once again, thank you all. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.